Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. You can check out the monthly membership called Teach the Geek to Speak Society. It's a monthly membership where you get ongoing public speaking support, and you can learn about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Erin Thorp. She is a leadership development coach, a professional speaker, and author of the book Inside Out Empathy. She wasn't always all these things, though. She worked in the construction industry for a number of years, but eventually left it all behind to start her own business. And I'm really interested to learn more about her start in engineering, the motivation to write her book, and her journey in self-employment. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Erin.
Thank you for having me, Neil.
So from the bit of research I did on you, I saw that you got your degree in civil engineering. What was the motivation to get that degree?
Well, it was basically the only department I could go into in university that I didn't need English marks for, because that was my least favorite subject in high school. So I was sort of like, how do I get out of this? And so grabbed that university calendar. Back then it was a book, and went and kind of spent the weekend researching what sort of faculties I could get into that didn't require that.
Huh. So all the other engineerings required English except civil engineering?
Oh, no, I mean, just engineering as a whole. Then once I got
Okay.
into the department, we had to declare our majors at the end of first year in my degree program. And so, yeah, after looking at them, I just felt like civil engineering would provide me the most opportunity, because I still didn't really know what I exactly wanted to do after 1 year of, pretty intense studies. Not having a background or family in engineering. So civil engineering seemed like the best fit for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, you know what? English was the bane of my existence too when I was in high school. I thought I was a pretty good writer, but I remember my last year, my senior year, I had taken English class, and I remember I read in the local newspaper. I still remember this. At least back then, I don't know if this is the case now. They would list the person in the district that had the highest grades in various, in the various top in subjects. So there was somebody that had like 100% in their English class, and I remember reading about them. And this person had been in the country maybe 3 years. English isn't even their first language. I remember thinking to myself, how the hell did they get 100% in the damn English class? I was speaking English my whole life, and I couldn't get no 100%. I think I had like an 85. I remember, I had these grades. I thought it was great, and I remember and the teacher that I had, I don't know why you had to bring this up. This is bringing back bad memories now. So the person that I had for my teacher, he was a sub. So we had a original teacher, and I guess he had some sort of mental breakdown or something like that. So a month into the class, he's gone, and then this damn Mr. Shaw, still remember his name, comes in as the substitute, and he's giving me all these low grades. Up until that point, I was doing pretty good in that English class with the original teacher. And then this damn sub comes in. I start getting these subpar grades, and my father said to go to him and ask him for higher grades. I was like, "Is that how it works?" But I was like, "Hey, I got no other choice. I got no other ideas. Let me go see if this works." I'm like, "Oh, well," and I asked for higher grades, and he said, "No, he's not gonna give me higher grades." So I had the lower, I guess, the 85. I think it was 85% in that English class, and it's just, man, I remember being so annoyed by that. But why did you bring that up?
Sorry for that trip down memory lane there.
I had that buried in the recesses of my mind, and then I heard English, and it just brought it all back. Oh man, 1997 all over again.
There you
go. But then so now you've graduated from school. Was going into construction the goal, or was that something you fell into?
No, kind of fell into that. So I did an internship program. So between third and fourth year, had to go get a job, had a couple of interviews, ended up getting hired by a construction company, and had an absolute blast. I was put right out onto a site very early on, got to see a whole project come together from foundation to turnover in the 16 months that I was there. And I remember on that project, having to call in different engineers and designers from the design world who graduated just a few years ahead of me, who were now, on the design side of things, coming out and being like, what you've drawn on the piece of paper doesn't actually fit into the hole in the ground or the form that you've specified, or all of these things. And so it was partly way through that experience that I was like, I may end up in design someday, but I need to stay here in construction for a while and figure out how all this stuff goes together, because there was just such valuable learning there. And I love still being able to drive around the city and be like, I remember every nut and bolt that went into that project. Anyway, needless to say, I never did end up in design. I stayed for 20 years in construction building projects. So
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because you have these two types of people, the two that go into engineering, the ones that they're very insistent on what they want to do, and then the others that kind of well, I wouldn't say fell into it, but aren't as insistent as what they want to do. And I firmly believe that the second group is the one you want to be in. You don't want to be too rigid in what you want to do when you finish school and you go out into the real world, because oftentimes there's a lot of things that you don't even know about, and you may be missing out on something that you really liked, but because you were so laser focused on this one thing, then you miss out on it. So it's smart of you to stay open and just be open to those possibilities.
yeah.
Out of curiosity, when you graduated from school, I mean, did you go to school away from home, or were you close to
Yeah.
home?
No, I was about 4 hours away from home. So yeah, I grew up on a farm in northern Alberta in Canada, and so had to move to the city to go to school. So yeah,
Oh, a farm. Wow, that
yeah,
sounds so rustic.
it is. It was.
That sounds so cool. Okay. So then so you leave the farm, you go to school in the big city, you graduate, you worked in construction, and then eventually you leave all that behind. You write a book, and you do all this other stuff. So I'm really interested to learn more about your book, Inside Out Empathy. So when I think of engineers, empathy is not the first word that comes to mind. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know. I'm hoping to change that, Neil. I'm hoping to change that. That is my mission. Yeah, and it really wasn't. It definitely wasn't my experience. Being led by and being involved in the engineering and construction world. It got to a point in my career where I was sort of like, either something's got to give, I got to learn some new skills, or I got to get out of here, because it just got so uncomfortable. And it just really felt like I was constantly being told I had to be something different than I felt like I was to fit in and to belong. And so that's when I kind of got curious and started to doing some self-development work, hired a couple coaches, started to really look at kind of how I was showing up, what was going on. Did it with the intention of trying to fix this part of me that everyone had told me for so long that was broken, which was that I was emotional and that I, didn't have a game face and I wasn't tough enough to be in construction. All of these things, right, that are the narratives that we kind of hear. And so that was the goal, was to kind of fix that part of me, and quickly and not so quickly realized that it wasn't something that needed to be fixed. I just needed to better understand it. And then eventually got to the point where I learned how to leverage it in terms of my own leadership, and had a chance to then go back into construction with these new skills and kind of test it out and sort of, see, hey, if I lead with empathy, how is this going to work? And I liked the results. My company liked the results. The project benefited from it. And so the book was born because it was really the advice that I needed to hear as a young engineer, and the tools that I needed to have as a new leader.
So you didn't have a game face. What was your face?
It was exactly what I was thinking in any given moment. So if I was happy, it was there, and if I was angry or mad or frustrated, it was all right there too.
Okay, so you shouldn't be playing poker, is what you're saying.
I'm definitely not a good poker player. Totally.
Okay, what's an example of leading with empathy?
So I think the biggest thing is that we actually we understand that the way a person feels impacts their ability to produce. And so taking time to, so if you have a deadline that's due, or a project that you've got to get delivered, or a deliverable that somebody's working on, leading with empathy would be to go in and see how that person feels about it, right? Are they motivated? Are they feeling like it's achievable? What's getting in their way? Really exploring kind of the emotional side of that task or goal and that landscape that person's dealing with, before we start focusing on like, hey, deadline's Friday, you're late, what's going on? Because that's really the technical problem solving part of our brain wants to go right to the situation. And we forget about the person that's actually doing the work.
Right. What if the person's lazy?
Well, I mean, that's okay. Then we can have a different conversation about maybe this isn't the right role for you, right? Right? I
Yeah,
mean, just
absolutely.
because we're leading with empathy doesn't mean we're doormats and getting
Okay,
walked
good.
all over.
Yeah.
There's definitely some boundaries there, but perhaps we can figure out why this isn't a good fit and help them explore what might be better.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. You know, when you were talking, it reminded me just the idea of the book. It reminded me of another conversation that I had with a previous guest, and she was a software engineer, and empathy in that industry is pretty non-existent for.
Yeah.
And she said that oftentimes, if you were to ask a question in an email, you might get the response RTFM. You know what that stands for? Read the effing manual. Can you imagine getting that response if you asked the
Oh,
question?
no kidding.
You probably wouldn't ask many
I would want
questions.
to start back with like RTFB, read the book. Yeah, exactly.
Probably wouldn't ask that many
Oh.
questions after you get that response one too many times. Yeah.
No, you certainly wouldn't. And I think that's, that in itself is, as engineers, we're definitely, and technical people, I mean, whether you're an engineer or science, math, the STEM profession in general, we're trained to solve problems. And the faster we can solve problems, in theory, the more productive we can be and the better outcomes we can get. The issue in that is often there are people involved in those problems, and people have feelings. We are emotional beings for a reason. Our emotions are part of our kind of intelligence system inside of our body, and carry a lot of clues and information for us about what's working and what's not. And when we bypass the emotional body in the human being, we actually limit our ability to produce and to meet our goals, and we remove some of that capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, I could certainly see that. So I'm curious, did you see any, I guess, did you get any kind of feedback before and after you did your work on developing more empathy for the people that you were leading? And what was the response?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. I had a director one time that he actually pointed it out. So it was kind of in the middle of my own uh, personal development journey. I wrote kind of, in the middle of that. And he said, what I noticed is that you know how people feel on the team, and it's something that I don't know. And so I'm wondering if we can work together, if this is what I need to accomplish with our team, can you tell me how the people are reacting and how they're feeling and where we might make adjustments? And so that was really the first time that I got a chance to use my abilities to be able to really have conversations with the team, understand what was going on from a feelings perspective, if you will, and align that to what our team needed to be done, like what our team needed to be doing and accomplishing. And it was remarkable because we came together, we had it was probably one of the best teams I ever worked on,
Hmm. Is
because we
it
got a lot done. We had a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Um, and people knew that we cared about them.
Is there ever an issue with balancing the feelings of the team members with the, I guess, the bottom line of getting the job done? And if so, how do you balance that?
Um, yes, there is. And I think, what I'm learning is, I think and where I spent 20 years in my career attacking it from, if we get the job done, then we'll feel good. Right. So let's just focus on the productivity and the output and just nail the thing, get the job done. And now in the last sort of 5 years, what I've been focusing on is, how do we feel good about what we're doing and where we're going, so that we can actually do a better job meeting that goal. And what's remarkable is it's a lot less of a push if we focus on how people feel and help them feel good about what we're doing, feel like they're cared for, feel like we understand them, feel like we can put ourselves in their perspective. They're open to share their ideas with us. We get places faster. There's more innovation, more creativity. We actually overproduce and are better able to meet those goals and deadlines. So it's just taking off. It's a different approach. It's unlearning the way we were taught to solve problems as engineers.
Oh wow, I'm learning. That must be, is that a difficult sell for people? Because oftentimes people might be resistant to change.
Oh, they're very resistant to change. I mean, this
Okay.
is like, this is not for the faint of heart, my friend.
Gotcha. I understand. All right. So when it comes to your book, who's it written for and what can people get from it?
So I wrote it for kind of that first time leader or somebody who's just starting out in their leadership journey. And it's basically the tips, tricks, and tools that I needed to be introduced to when I was first learning, that I finally realized what I had, 10 to 15 years into my career. And I'm sort of like, this is what I wish I had. So it's part my story, part kind of manual. It's got some reflective exercises and ways to engage in terms of building your empathy muscle, because contrary to popular belief, empathy is something you can learn and build. It's just like any other muscle in your body. The more you use it, the stronger it will get. So there's definitely some reflective exercises in there as well, but just a way to start to develop empathy for self and empathy for others.
Got you. All right. So there's a before and after you when it
Yeah.
comes to working in the engineering fields. There's before empathy and then after empathy. But even after empathy, there was I'm quitting my job and I'm starting my own thing. So what prompted you to leave engineering or leave the corporate world behind and start your own business?
This desire to impact more people. I realized that what I was doing inside my team was great, but it was very few people that were kind of benefiting from what it is that I do and how I lead, and some of the thoughts there. So this desire to just impact more, and honestly, you kind of opened with it, right? Empathy and engineering doesn't go together, and I'd like to change that.
Hmm.
I'd like to
Yeah.
change that.
Yeah. No question.
Because I
When it,
think we use empathy. Here's where I see, as engineers, we use empathy in terms of problem solving when we have to think about how what it is we're designing is going to impact the people, right? So if it's a bridge in a neighborhood, if it's a new housing development, if it's a piece of software, there is a part of empathy that gets built into the design process. Where we fall short as engineers is with each other and when we're leading teams through that work.
okay, I got you. It's like these external stakeholders will take their I guess
Yeah,
their feelings into account, but the people that are actually doing the work, we kind of
that's right.
ignore them.
We're going to forget their people and treat them like robots because they're just solving problems.
Well,
Yeah.
they're the closest things to robots we got on the planet. They're engineers.
Right.
That's
And they're still human beings.
yeah, yeah, apparently they got blood just like everybody else and hearts and all those organs. Same stuff. Yeah,
Same stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually so you strike out on your own. I'm just curious when it comes to working with I don't know, if you work with organizations, is it ever a tough sell to even convince them that this is work that is necessary within their organizations? And if so, how do you convince them?
Absolutely. It's getting easier because there are a lot more studies being done and research papers being produced, and there bodies of work being done where they actually track and kind of look at, okay, when leaders demonstrate empathy, this is what we see in terms of the team's engagement, productivity, output, innovation. It's even affecting things now like lowering rates of burnout. When we lead with empathy, people don't get burned out. So burnout is like this epidemic right now in the industry because people are just working all the time. We can stay connected all the time, uh, especially working from home. I mean, our computers are in our living rooms. We can never have to turn it off if we don't want to. So burnout levels are at an all-time high. Yet the studies are starting to show that if we lead with empathy, burnout rates are lower because we're more likely to allow somebody to find that balance point in their life because we're able to understand what they're going through, and they feel good about themselves and they still produce, right? When we focus just on the production, people start to feel like robots and they're not.
Yeah.
So it is a tough sell. To come back to your question, it is a tough sell at times, depending on where that leadership group is at and the vision that they have for their organization. What I will tell you is there are a lot more visionary leaders out there and leaders who understand the importance of workplace well-being, which is where this fits in. And we're starting to get that research piece that really supports the business case to spending some time to teach people about empathy.
So do you work mainly with engineers or do you work with anyone else within organizations?
I would do a lot of work in the technical field, manufacturing, science, engineering, math, construction, those types of fields. But, the more time I spend in this business, the more time I realize that it's applicable across the board because we're all human beings.
So it's not just the engineers that got the problems, other people got issues too?
No, absolutely.
But I would think that you being an engineer yourself, you would at least have that credibility with the engineers. If you were to go
It does help.
these other groups, maybe sales is like, what the hell do you know? You don't know my life.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Right. And that's the thing. It's going to take a lot of different people approaching this from a lot of different ways. Right. I have one unique perspective, having been an engineer and kind of come up through that ranks. There's other people that will have a different way of reaching different audiences.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to even the work that you do, it's really important to be able to communicate with people. It even comes down to just being persuasive and just convincing them this is work that is necessary and that they should bring into their organization. Is communicating with others something you've always been good at? And if not, what did you do to get better at it?
Definitely wasn't. And so again, when I first became a leader, it was something that was getting in my way as to be an effective leader. Like my effectiveness was not great because I sort of had this my way or the highway approach, right? And so, definitely something I've had to work on, all part of my self-development journey, taken a lot of courses. Now I teach a lot of courses around communication and having difficult conversations. So it keeps me in the material, fresh with the tools. I'm a firm believer. They say you teach what you need to learn. And so these are two areas in my life that certainly have benefited me, but I also needed to learn these lessons.
Huh. So you yourself didn't even have empathy at one point.
No.
Oh, man.
Wow, like I said, it's a journey.
Yeah, no question. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm glad you went on that journey, and I'm sure that the people that you work with, they're glad that you went on that journey too. You're not telling them, RTFM. No one's gonna.
There is no manual here.
So when it comes to the presentations that you do you have a process for putting them together? And if so, what is it?
Yes. And it really just starts with kind of evaluating what the organization or group is looking to achieve, right? So coming back to having them paint me a picture of what success looks like at the end of this either keynote presentation or workshop, or what is it you want your people to walk away with? What's success going to look like? And then working backwards from there. So attacking it a little bit like an engineering problem to solve in terms of here's the desired outcome, and then working backwards in terms of how to best achieve that goal.
This is a question I just thought of. When it comes to empathy, is there ever a case where the people that you're addressing don't really care so much about empathy, whether it's given to them or whether they are the ones expressing it?
Yes.
And what do you do if that's the case?
I try not to, hopefully it's not a large portion of the audience, but I definitely have the non-believers in the crowd, and I try not to let them derail it for everyone else, to be honest with you, because even if I touch one or two people in that audience and make an impact, I do believe in that ripple effect. It's like kind of throwing stones in water, and eventually things start to vibrate at a different level.
When it comes to leadership, are you a proponent of leading people the way they want to be led, or the leader is the one who determines the leadership style and the people are supposed to, get on board with that leadership style?
Definitely the former, leading people in the way that they need to be led.
Okay. And so if that's the case and you have a group and that group is not all that big believer or don't even think empathy is that big a deal, would you try to convince them that it is? Or would you just say, well, they're not the big believers in empathy, so no to empathy?
It would depend on the style of the presentation or format. If there was an opportunity to engage in dialogue with them in terms of a workshop setting, I would definitely want to explore that a little bit more and see kind of where that resistance is coming from, because it could be a part of a perspective that I'm just not aware of at that point in time. And so to kind of see how they're how they're seeing it and what their viewpoint is. If it's a lecture style, generally I don't get that feedback until, the feedback forms are submitted.
Right.
So do try to work that into keynote presentations. And I try to do that through examples, sharing kind of my own situations so that people can kind of see, oh, that's what we're actually talking about here. Because sometimes empathy can be a bit of a fuzzy subject.
Yeah, actually, that's my next question. So when you talk about empathy, how do you define it?
So for me, it's simply around this ability to connect with and understand what someone else might be going through. So emotionally, perspective wise, thoughts, opinions, beliefs, so cognitive and emotional sort of realms, right? Can I understand and connect with you in that space? I think where we get tripped up a lot is people think if I demonstrate empathy, it means I'm agreeing with you, right? And that's not true. We can be empathic and disagree. Right? I can be empathic and I can be boundaried and not be a doormat and have my team walk all over me. So they're really dispelling a lot of these beliefs that empathy is weakness, empathy is soft, empathy means I'm agreeing with everybody, so I never have an opinion or a perspective. Kind of dispelling all of that. It simply means I'm willing to sit here and understand what the world looks like from your perspective.
Interesting, because whenever well, thank you for that definition. Because when I thought of empathy, I thought it meant that you are able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And I figured if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, then you're going to agree with them because you're in their shoes. But,
right.
but I guess
right.
it doesn't really make all that much sense because just like you said, you don't always have to agree with someone and be empathetic.
No. Yeah. And it's basically like, if we were to use an object, for instance, it's like, you see this side of the cup, I see this side of the cup. Well, if we turn it around, it's just like looking at it, right? Like I can take your perspective, look at it and give it back to you. I don't need to necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, okay, I got you. When it comes to presentations, do you ever get nervous? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Yeah, I think over the years I don't call them nerves anymore. I call it excitement because physiologically the body doesn't know the difference between the two. It presents in the same way. And so what I try to do is do some really deep breathing before kind of getting up in front of the audience and just kind of centering myself, but then using those nerves and that excitement to bring some energy to the presentation.
Yeah, I like that, reframing it as a positive as opposed to a negative. I'm a big fan of that too. Even when it comes to people that tell themselves that they're not great public speakers, you need to visualize success, because if you keep telling yourself you're not good, you'll likely stay that way. But if you tell yourself I'm improving, this is something that I commit to get better at, then those thoughts will most likely be at the forefront and you will actually get better. So don't tell yourself you suck. Tell yourself you're good.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And watch people spend some time there. But certainly, because we all, and I look at it this way, if I didn't get excited or have a nervous if I didn't have any sort of reaction, then I'm probably not that invested in what I'm sharing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that too.
So the reason I'm having this reaction right now is because I care so much about what it is that I want to share and the importance of this message. So really using that as fuel for the fire.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. If you don't care about what you're saying, then the nerves probably aren't there either. But this has been great speaking with you, Erin. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Best way is just on my website, www.erinthorpe.ca.
Okay, Erin Thorp, no E.ca, everybody. You heard it. Well, everybody, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Consider checking out Teach the Geek to Speak Society. It's a monthly membership where you can get ongoing public speaking support. You can learn about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.